Hi everyone, welcome to today's Positive Planet webinar, Life Cycle Assessments in Action. This is the penultimate episode of Positive Planet's 6-part webinar series, Sustainability in Practice. Today we're going to be excited to build on our discussions from episode 1, diving a little bit deeper into the world of life cycle assessments, sharing practical examples of how effective LCAs can drive improved product design, boost business reputation, and support strategic decision making. So just before we get started, I want to give you a quick reminder on some housekeeping and hopefully minimize any technical issues you might experience. So please unmute your device after joining so that you can hear webinar speakers. And if you have any problems, just send us a message in the chat. Today's session will be recorded, so you'll be able to revisit it later or share with your colleagues on YouTube. The link to that will be shared in a follow-up email. And in terms of timings today, we'd love this to be as interactive as possible. So if you haven't already, please feel free to introduce yourself and your LCA experience and what you might want to gain out of today in the chat, and add any questions that you may have as you go. We'll look at those at the end. We aim to finish up on the slides around 12:55, so we'll have a few minutes there for questions, and if we're not able to answer all of them, we'll follow up on an email as well. So with all of that out of the way, I'll quickly introduce who we are for those of you who are new to us. So we're Positive Planet, a small team helping businesses to turn sustainability goals into real impact. Everything from emissions measurement and policy updates to ESG guidance and accredited training. We provide practical, jargon-free as much as we can support tailored to what really matters for your business. So today you have myself, Bryony Salter, the Head of Sustainability, and Dr. Michael Kenyon, our Principal LCA Consultant, who will be leading today's webinar. So Michael, over to you.
Thank you, Bryony, and thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. As Bryony said, I'm Dr. Michael Kenyon. I'm the Principal Lifecycle Assessment Consultant at Positive Planet. So I've been delivering LCAs, environmental product declarations, product carbon footprints, and other associated sustainability analysis for many years across a number of different materials sectors. My career in sustainability actually goes all the way back to my PhD. So I've got a couple of slides just giving a recap from webinar 1 of our series, which was based on demystifying life cycle assessment. I won't go into too much details, but I do have a link to that episode 1 if you do want to look at some of those aspects in more detail. But what we're really going to focus on is moving from the analysis stage to the impact stage. And I have a number of case studies to go through before hopefully talking about the next steps with Positive Planet. So as a quick introduction to life cycle assessment, it's a structured, comprehensive and internationally standardized method used to measure the life cycle environmental impact of a product or service, whether that's climate change impact, acidification, or other impacts related to emissions to water and soil. And there's a number of different types of studies we can do when doing an LCA, from cradle to grave, cradle to gate, and others. And again, if you want to see more details about an introduction to life cycle assessment, you can see the link to episode 1 at the bottom of that slide there. I've actually incorporated a number of other slides from episode 1 into one slide here, just to reiterate the value of doing a life cycle assessment, whether that's exploring ways to reduce environmental impacts through to communicating LCAs and environmental information to key stakeholders, through to enhancing your brand reputation. And again, please see episode 1 for a little bit more detail around those different LCA objectives. But what we're going to focus on today is moving from the analysis stage through to the impact stage. Now, once you have your LCA or EPD or product carbon footprint, That's just your starting point. So the key is utilizing the findings to take action on climate and other environmental impacts and bring about those business benefits. So at Positive Planet, we work with businesses to understand their specific challenges and goals, to deliver the most appropriate product analysis, and most importantly, support you in those follow-up actions to ensure positive impact. So on this slide here is just a quick example of some of the ways that we will do that in practice. So at the top, you can see we've conducted that LCA and we've identified those environmental impact hotspots. We'll then give you the resources and the knowledge to engage others in your organization in order to implement some of those impact reduction opportunities. Whether it's your design team, your product engineers, process engineers, procurement colleagues, or sales staff, we'll embed the findings of those LCAs and give them the ability to then look at those impact opportunities, whether that's internal or external, whether it's quick wins or looking at more longer term alternative materials or alternative suppliers. Again, we will support you on that journey. Now, it might be you've engaged your supply chain within the LCA. An LCA can be a really good way of engaging that supply chain. But if you haven't done that already, again, Positive Planet can support in bringing those suppliers on that sustainability journey and helping them reduce their environmental impact. And we can do that in and out of an LCA. Once you've made those internal decisions, you've implemented some of those practical environmental impact reduction opportunities, you of course want to link that back to the overall business strategy, as those environmental impact reductions will reduce the organizational footprint altogether. And you want to communicate that to your key stakeholders. And again, Positive Planet can support in putting those resources together. So just moving on to some examples of LCA in practice. This is specifically around SMEs, and I've broken this down into the original challenge, the type of analysis that was conducted, the action that was taken, and then the overall impact from that study and action. So on the left-hand side, you can see there was an architectural firm here that stated they were losing business due to a lack of environmental product declarations for their construction products. Now, behind an EPD is a detailed LCA. So they conducted 5 LCAs in support of publishing those EPDs. And subsequently, they won 5 tenders, with EPDs being a core requirement for those tenders. In the middle, we have a PC designer who embedded LCA at the very start of their design process for new PC components. And by modeling the lower impact solutions that they ultimately chose, they showed life cycle carbon footprint savings of 47 to 55% for those particular PC components compared to the traditional materials that they could have chosen. On the right-hand side, there's an advanced textiles firm who saw the demand for lower impact materials in the textile sector. So they used LCA to guide their product and process development options, which allowed them to bring to market innovative raw material sources. That gives more sustainable material options to the industry altogether for those clients to reduce their environmental impact. Just a few more case studies related to SMEs. There's a study that I worked on a few years ago now, but working with a secondary aluminium producer who wanted to communicate the impact of their recycled products versus the primary production equivalent. And this was in support of communication to one of their key stakeholders. And the LCA highlighted the significant difference in carbon impact, and actually not just the carbon impact, but other environmental impacts as well. And from this, their client incorporated some of those recycled aluminium products into a new market product that they were bringing to market. In the middle, automotive supplier that I worked with highlighted that one of the automotive OEMs that they wanted to bid for new components, they actually mandated the requirement to submit environmental impact information to them as part of the bid request. And this particular study was for 3 new components. So we followed the LCA methodology according to the automotive OEM, and we provided the environmental impact assessment that needed to go with that bid request. And in this particular study, they actually won 2 out of 3 of those components where LCA was mandated as key information to provide. And finally, on the right-hand side, one of our clients wanted to simply understand what the environmental impact of the product was. And this was for a storage device within the IT data center market. Now, the LCA highlighted Scope 3 raw material hotspots, but along with the study, we provided an impact reduction plan which they could implement, and that highlighted the reduction in carbon footprint of 32%. But really importantly, in this study, we actually trained the sales staff and gave them the key resources they needed to communicate the overall results of the study to their stakeholders. Now, LCAs aren't a one-time thing and then they're forgotten about. More and more businesses are developing ongoing LCA strategies and continuing to improve their products over time. And I thought a really good example of this was Volvo Cars, or is Volvo Cars. Now, back in 2019, Volvo set an ambitious target of reducing life cycle carbon footprint per vehicle by 40% between 2018 and 2025. And they've actually embedded the idea of sustainability right throughout their organization as a key pillar. And as part of that, they embedded LCA as a key methodology to understand the environmental impact of their vehicles and the carbon footprint of their vehicles. And the first study that they published was actually based around a comparison of the petrol versus battery electric XC40 vehicle. This study is published online, and I'll talk a little bit about it in the next slide. But ultimately, they wanted to disclose transparent carbon footprint information for that vehicle, but also all their vehicles moving forwards, which they have done. And because of that, they really are seen as one of the most sustainably conscious automotive suppliers, and it's really helped improve their brand reputation as one of the most sustainable automotive companies. And just some other examples of some of the other studies that they've released since then. Polestar, which is a bit of a spin out from Volvo, but again, they worked with the Volvo sustainability team to release and publish the carbon footprint life cycle of the Polestar vehicles. Some of those were reported around 2023, but more recently in 2025, they've released the LCA for the EX30. And what they've done over the years is they've improved not only on the LCA methods that they've employed for these studies, but they've implemented the initiatives that and the carbon footprint reductions that they've highlighted across these different studies. And they're bringing their suppliers with them. And you can see that in the most recent EX30 report, where they start to go into more detail about the battery composition and processing, and really highlighting how their supply chain is engaging in that sustainability journey with them. So I've included just one slide from that original study in 2019 on the XC40, because I still get the question, are battery electric vehicles actually more environmentally friendly than their petrol counterparts, at least from a life cycle carbon footprint sense? And if you are interested in this, please go and download this study. It's a really good LCA to read. And essentially what you can see from this figure in the middle, the left-hand side is the petrol vehicle, left-hand column, and the other three columns are battery electric vehicle to different electricity charging mixes. And ultimately what we can see is that the battery electric vehicle does have lower life cycle carbon footprint impact for the XC40. And actually, if you charge that XC40 on an EU average electricity mix, there's a 22% decrease for life cycle carbon footprint of the electric vehicle versus the petrol equivalent. But of course, for battery electric vehicles, we have to consider the increase in emissions from materials production. And that's what Volvo have done. They've utilized the understanding and the results of the LCA to set up initiatives in order to reduce that impact across their newer vehicle releases and vehicle material, the materials that they use for their new vehicles. Before I go on to my last case study, I just thought this was a really nice statement from the Body Shop on how they use LCA, again reinforcing using LCA to eco-design the products and negate some of that negative impact that they have on the planet, and really emphasizing that moving from analysis to impact stage. So finally, I wanted to focus on something a little bit of a different tone here, because so far we've focused on the immediate business benefits, but I just wanted to highlight that the effects and the choices that you make resulting from your LCA do have a significant effect on global emissions. And here I'm going to be talking about three materials: cement, steel, and aluminium, as an example. Now, these three material systems are the most widely used material systems in the world after water. And you can see some of the global production statistics there. And collectively, they account for around 17% of global GHG emissions, which is a huge slice of the global emissions. And on the right-hand side, you can see the production intensity of the primary material that I'm sure many people on this call may or may not be using. Now, what the international associations, trade bodies did over the past couple of decades, they started to collect data and publish LCAs on a global sector level to give an understanding of the environmental impact from these material systems. But not only that, they produce decarbonisation pathways. And that leads me to this next slide. Because they published these LCAs, that allowed practitioners like me to embed more sustainable options into LCA studies that I'm conducting for our clients and giving various more sustainable solutions to various industries. Now, what this has led to is an overall global reduction in emissions from these industries. On the left-hand side, we can see the International Aluminium Institute statistics, where in the orange line, you can see a growth in production of aluminium, but the overall emissions, global sector emissions, are now coming down because of the information that we've gained from LCAs and some of the solutions and initiatives that have been put in place. Not quite as positive a message for steel, but again, we're seeing an increase in production, and those emissions are quite static, but we should see those emissions coming down with some of the decarbonisation pathways that the industry is putting in place. So before I move on to the Q&A, what are the next steps on your LCA journey? If you want to conduct a product carbon footprint LCA, EPD, or you even want to incorporate some of the economic aspects into the environmental assessment, so life cycle costing, come and discuss these specifics with me. You can book in a call with me directly via that link in the second bullet point or via that QR code. That will take you straight to my schedule and you can book in a time that suits you. We'll discuss the specifics around your product or service. I'll ask a number of key questions that will allow us to pull together a quote and give timescales for that project and any follow-on actions. We'll then provide that proposal and give a number of different options depending on the objective and the complexity of the study. At the bottom of this slide here, you can see my email and my LinkedIn. Please feel free to reach out to me on either channel if you have any further questions or comments. So thank you very much. And I think we do have some time for some questions.
Absolutely, we do. And thank you very much, Michael. Really, really interesting. And I think it's pretty clear that any businesses with sort of products, it's really important to be thinking about LCAs, both from a business benefit, but that wider global benefit that you've mentioned as well. So really interesting there. We've had a couple of questions in the chat, but if you do have any more that you want to ask, please add those in as we're talking and we'll get to them afterwards. But the first one for you, Michael, is from Emma. I'm coming from a drinks manufacturing company and we want to reduce our product emissions. Our customers ask about our sustainability and have suggested that we may need this information to remain a supplier in the future, but at the moment we're not required to do anything. Where would you recommend that we start?
That is a great question. That actually sounds quite similar to the example I gave for the automotive supply case study who I worked with previously. And what I would say is if your client is suggesting it's not needed now, but maybe needed later, absolutely get on that journey now. You don't want to be rushing into an LCA. They can be quite complex and the data collection phase does take a little bit of time. So my suggestion would be to absolutely get on that journey now. And even if your client doesn't ask for that information later on, you have started that sustainability journey and understanding of your own environmental impact, and then you can implement those carbon and impact reduction opportunities across your organization and supply chain. So I would say absolutely start to get involved in LCAs and potentially EPDs as soon as you can.
Thanks, Michael. And I think to add to that as well, there are sort of simple ways of doing life cycle assessments in doing streamlined versions. So do talk to us if you're sort of interested in getting started, and we can understand your specific needs on that. And also, as you've mentioned earlier, Michael, there are a huge amount of business benefits to doing an LCA and understanding your product, and it might be making your processes more efficient, reducing costs, improving your branding, your marketing. So all sorts of things that will sort of benefit your business. And again, we can talk to you about your goals and where you're wanting to go with that, and sort of suggest which route you should take. But definitely good to get started if you're expecting something to happen within your supply chain or from your customers. So second question is from Jane. How can we monitor the impact of changes made post LCA? Is there an easier way than redoing LCAs regularly, which would be very costly and time consuming?
Yes, absolutely. So once you've done an initial LCA, that's your baseline and anchor. And as you implement those impact reduction solutions, you won't need to redo the whole LCA. You can simply update those aspects that you have changed and potentially just include some additional scenario analysis or sensitivity analysis to see where that impact really is as you start to collect primary data from those impact opportunities that you have put in place. Just for as an example, EPDs are valid for 5 years, assuming that you don't change the process or material inputs in a significant manner. So LCAs are very much valid for quite a long time. But as you do start to incorporate those changes, you can start to look at how that does affect the LCA without having to do the whole LCA. Again, you shouldn't have to do that. It just gives you that starting point and that baseline that you can then build on as you implement those changes.
And Michael, what exactly is a sensitivity analysis?
Good question. Good question. Well, you can see episode 1. I do talk about it in there. But a sensitivity analysis looks at various inputs and effects on the outputs within the study. So it might be that you have the potential to switch your transport logistics to a different supplier. It might mean slightly different routes for those logistics or different mode of transports. And we'll look at that in additional scenarios and sensitivities. So you can see the effect of those reduction opportunities or effect of different options that your business might have. So it's really looking at an understanding of how you can ultimately reduce your impact and see how far you can take it. Another example would be recycled content. You might be using 100% virgin material for one aspect, one material. But what would happen if you increase the recycled content? Then we can look at that in sensitivity analysis, and that would give you, it would show you the effects of that impact reduction by choosing that choice.
Great. So there's a lot more flexibility sort of baked into the LCA process than might seem initially. So again, if you are interested in any of this and looking at different scenarios, do let Michael know and talk to him about your specific goals. Another question from Emma. So once we have our LCA results, how do we translate them into staff training or internal processes?
So we will supply supplementary material as well, which we can essentially condense in the key aspects of the LCA to help with those resources that anybody within your organization may need to use those results. And the training will include how to communicate that across the business, along with other aspects as well. And then in terms of internal processes, that sort of leads back to one of my earlier slides, where it's about engaging those other members of your organization and bringing them on that sustainability journey. So we'll make sure that whether it's your sustainability manager or individual or team, they have the right skills and resources to translate that information to the rest of your organization that will help put those solutions in place for those internal processes. So about giving you the right skills and knowledge, and obviously we do that through follow-on training after the LCA.
Great. So again, sort of bespoke, flexible to the organisation and their needs. And we have seen that with quite a few of our clients now. And it's about understanding what you need, what your clients need, and going from there and making that bespoke training. So final question, and then we'll be finishing up pretty much bang on time, hopefully. So Jane, again, how do we simplify the findings in an LCA to communicate the relevant bits to customers? Is this something you can help with?
Yes, so it's hit a good point here. The interpretation of LCA results can get quite complex, but it's the job of the LCA practitioner to put that in terms that everybody can understand. And again, what we'll do is we'll emphasize the key elements of the findings and translate that into an easy to use format. It might be, again, in supplementary material, along with, in combination with a bit of training. As standard, we always have a number of meetings towards the end of the study to go through those results in detail and to ensure that you have that understanding so that you can portray that to your key stakeholders as well. And if additional support is required, then we can absolutely offer that in whatever form that might need to be. It may be that we need to help with your marketing material and using the results of the LCA in your sustainability report or in other marketing material, and we can absolutely support with that.
Great. And I think the other thing that comes up quite a lot as well is concerns around greenwashing. So that's another bit that we're sort of here to help with, is making sure that you're not greenwashing in any of your communications, you're communicating that effectively and sort of correctly. So here to help on all counts. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for your questions. If you do have any more, please do email us. And join us on the 8th of October for the final episode in our series, Breaking Down Double Materiality. We'll show an easy, practical way to assess both how your business affects the world and how the world affects your business, helping you to focus your efforts and get ahead of ESG requirements your customers may be asking you for. ESG expert Emma Gray will guide you step by step, so that even if you've never thought about ESG before, you'll leave with a clear and simple way to get started. Sign up using the QR code on the screen now, and remember to look out for our next webinar series on LinkedIn, which we expect to go live shortly. And share with your colleagues or peers that might be interested. So thank you, Michael, for today, and thanks everyone for sharing your time with us. And please do have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Bryony. Thanks, everybody.